Welcome to tonight's three-part webinar series, How to Leverage Technology to Dramatically Increase Production, Quality, and Growth. Tonight is part 2, the technology, and it is being presented by Dr. Brian Laskin, and we will begin the webinar shortly. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Brian Laskin. Using 20 years of experience providing dental care to anxious patients, Dr. Brian Laskin's passion is to reduce stress for the dental industry through innovation, education, and standardization. Through his multiple businesses, Upgrade Dental, Digital Nitrous, Opera DDS, and Tooth Apps, and being the author of the book, The Patient First Manifesto, Dr. Laskin excels at integrating technology and teamwork into practices. He plays an active role at several progressive dental organizations, and he serves as counsel to leading dental companies. Through participation at the Dental Standards Institute groundbreaking workshops, Dr. Laskin is giving patients a voice, as well as creating important guidelines for emerging technologies. And with that, is my due honor to say, take it away, Dr. Laskin.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Just like I said yesterday, it's such an honor to work with you guys, and you do just amazing work behind the scenes to put on great continuing education. And I think for tomorrow, I'll give you a shorter bio because that's a little bit long. Sorry, everybody had to sit through that. My bio. Today, we're going to be talking about technology, how to leverage the technology piece to dramatically increase production quality and growth. If you were with us yesterday, we talked through the mindset to leverage technology and a simple example of prepping an all ceramic crown and how that is one way to view technology as the systems in your practice. But today we're actually going to talk about technology itself. And tomorrow, part 3, we're going to be talking about new patients, how to leverage technology specifically to generate new patients and what patients that aren't existing patients of yours are expecting on the front end. It's probably different than what you think from my perspective. So stay tuned tomorrow for that. And like Jessica said, make sure to, any questions you have at any time, just put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them at the end. We'll have plenty of time. So you don't need to wait till the end to ask a question. Feel free to interject it when the thought comes to mind. Same disclosure as last night, so I won't go into this too much, but I'm part of multiple companies, like Jessica mentioned, Tooth Apps, Lake Minnetonka Dental is my practice, Upgrade Dental, Digital Nitrous, and there's some other ones there too. I have a podcast too, the Patient First Podcast, where we talk about delivering dentistry from the patient's perspective, which is one of the teamwork, technology, and the patient's perspective is kind of my areas of focus. There has been no financial or in-kind support from any commercial organizations for this. So if you ask me about any of the technologies, I'm just going to give you my unfiltered opinions. And if I don't think that there is any specialty there's not one person that kind of is ahead of the pack in any area, I'll definitely mention that too. So our goals today for part 2, when we talk about the technology, number 1 is learn how to use technology to advance your practice. Obviously, that's the core message that we're going to be talking throughout the entire hour that we have together today. Knowing when to add tech. Yesterday, we talked about the cost filter, how to evaluate from a macro perspective whether a technology is right for you, but specifically when technology is right for you, as you'll find out in a little bit. How to translate the investment to your team and patients in a way that makes sense. And when I say make sense, I think in a way that makes sense to actually have this be a successful endeavor in your practice. I think a lot of us can evaluate technologies, but we don't really put a lot of work on the front end or thought on the front end of how we actually communicate this to our team, communicate this to our patients so that it eases our implementation, which, like we talked about yesterday, is the difference between an office that just successfully implements technology, has it be an additive force to their practice, or a piece of technology in another practice might just end up in the attic collecting dust. And oftentimes in dental practices, we do things by committee. So we want to have everybody on board with what we do, and we'll talk about that. Just for context, I gave a little bit of history yesterday about my practice, but this is a little more directional for this presentation. This is my first office, not Smoky's Super Ret, but way on the back of this disgusting strip mall. I had an 800 square foot practice that was 2.5 operatories, and it was a sketchy area, but we were bursting at the seams. So I moved that practice by acquiring another practice into a medical center about 6 blocks away. So we were on the third floor of an office building, sort of tucked in the corner. And after I bought this practice from just a craftsman of a dentist, this dentist started the Cosmetic Association here in Minneapolis. He was an initiator of what's called the Occlusion Club, and he had every single continuing education credit from all the great continuing education associations in dentistry. He was a mentor of mine clinically. And when I bought this practice, about a month later, after buying the practice, I had a moment like this, where I was having money come in and I was writing checks out. And at one point, I was wondering if I was going to make payroll. And it was a horrible feeling. Maybe some of the dentists on the call have had a moment like this. If you're a practice owner, it's where I felt like money was coming in, and I'd be like, yay. And then I'd pay bills and I'd be like, wait a minute, where'd all the money go? And so I hit a point where early on, after I bought my second practice, where I realized that I needed help. So I hired a consultant. And the very first thing that consultant told me to do was to digitize our charts. And what that meant was to take a paper chart where we had, this is not the charts, the schedule, digitize our schedules. This is back in the day, this is over 20 years ago. We had a big pad of paper that we would write the appointments in pencil, so that if somebody needed to change an appointment, we'd erase it and then put in another appointment, right? And seems silly to me now. I'm sure it sounds silly to all of you, but I had so much stress about getting rid of this paper schedule to put things on the computer. And maybe some of you have been practicing for 20 years, can feel that stress. But it seems ridiculous to me now. And if you started off with a digital schedule, you're like, why would you want to go to paper? My point is that not only is every technology challenge, even if it's better in every single way, there can be a high perceived barrier, even if it's not much of a barrier at all. And my second point is that you would think that this image on the left is from 1999. It's not. This is from the year 2023 Patterson catalog. There are dentists out there that are still ordering paper scheduling, right? And I don't, if you are one of those dentists, I don't at all understand. I don't misunderstand why. It's scary to change. It's scary to change technology, right? I had a consultant that forced me to do it. And it was just after doing it, after being forced to, because I paid somebody for their advice, I'm not going to not do what they said. Being forced to do it, I just realized how great it was. Then I took the next step, and I call it the technology snowball. If you successfully implement easy technology, meaning easier wins, lower barrier to entry, lower barrier to implementation, lower barrier to get a massive positive outcome, it's going to lead to most of us to want to take bigger technology steps. And that's the gist of what we're going to be talking about today. How, in what way, the timeline that we should implement technologies so we can get the early wins so that we can build up to the bigger wins and what those look like. So after I did this, after I switched my paper calendar to a digital calendar, I got it, right? But even more than me getting it, what I realized was that but even more than me, my team had a lot of non-productive time, that they were distracted with paper. And it's a source of anxiety if you're looking for a chart versus being able to just search a patient's name. And this is globally true of most technologies. If you implement them successfully, you'll find that you'll have more productive time. By productive time, I mean time spent with patients. If it's the business staff at the front desk who are picking up calls and dealing with papers, consent forms, and as we'll talk about in a little bit, that's unproductive time. I mean, they're not talking to patients, they're not providing human to human care, which is what most great team members want to do. And so technology at its core, in my opinion, should elevate our patient's experience and our team's experience. Because what are we doing? We're freeing them up to be less distracted, have less anxiety, and have more human contact. We are in a care business, and that doesn't involve shuffling papers around, trying to read people's handwriting, and all the sort of monotonous tasks that go on in the average dental practice. And so my example of my very first piece of technology that transformed my practice, going from a paper calendar to a digital calendar, you can think about that as we go through the different technologies today and how that is transformative in not just our time and our experience, but our team's time, and how it directly affects your patients. Because if we do this right and we implement technology, I believe strongly that some people on this call may think of something that they want to implement, and there's going to be massive positive cascading ripples from you to your team of, let's call it 10 people, and those 10 people to thousands of patients. That's my goal today talking to you, is I want to have that exponential positive impact from you to the patients through some easy technologies that you can implement today. I talked about this yesterday. This is my current office. We started off with the top floor. Now we take over the whole building. Again, I mentioned it yesterday, so I won't go into it too much, but basically develop technology for communication, both within the practice, communicating with patients, and then sold the dental practices and served as chief innovation officer at one of the largest groups of dental practices. And for the context for today, we're going to be talking about the first question that I was asked by the CEO of the organization that I was chief innovation officer when I joined that organization. And that question was, which technologies should we implement in our offices? Keep in mind that at this point, I'd already been doing CAD/CAM training for dentists for over 12 years. We had every single piece of technology that is available and still do in dentistry. And so this person, the CEO of this organization, said, Brian, which technologies should we be implementing in our offices? Well, as a big fan of CAD/CAM, CAD scanning, I was thinking, we were one of, I think, two practices out of 400 that had a CAD scan system. So I was thinking, well, gee, okay, now I got some work to do because I obviously we want to do CAD scanning within practices and then sending those files off to NDX to have phenomenal restorations made, right? Because it's more accurate. It's easier to diagnose to tell if your impression's good. If I can see it, the camera will see it. If you're not using CAD scanning today, I would highly recommend it, and it will be later on in our presentation. But I was thinking, there's 400 practices. We're only one of two that have CAD scanning. So I went and visited some of the offices to determine which one should we get. Should we get a 3Shape, an iTero, a Cerac, a Medit? There's Plan Mecca. There's many of them, and I'm sure NDX can accept files from all of these to give you great restorations. And then what I realized, it was like asking these practices, which electric car would you want to get? Do you want a Tesla, a Ford Mach-E that's a Lucid? And again, just like CAD/CAM systems, now there's more. There's, Volkswagen makes electric cars, Kia and and Audi, and there's the number of electric cars that you can buy now is exploding, just like there are CAD CAM systems, right? But just like what I really felt when I was, and I'm a big fan of electric cars too. When you are talking to these, when I went to talk to these practices about which CAD CAM systems to get, and it was like talking about electric cars to somebody that doesn't have a driver's license, right? Their technology stack and what they had done to implement technology, they just weren't at the point yet where CAD scanning was the highest priority. And what I realized then, sort of the aha moment that I had after talking to the practices was, well, this isn't my technology. This is the technology that's right for these offices. And if you're 10 years old, you're not looking for an electric car versus a combustion engine car. You're trying to look for the best bike to buy, right? So the takeaway I had was that timing is everything, right? Today, 23 years later or 21 years later, it seems ridiculous to me to have a paper schedule, right? When I've had the digital calendar for so long, now we even are at Two Thoughts, we've actually created a fully integrated calendar. So we've transforming calendars once again. However, it's not that long ago that I was afraid to switch from paper to a digital calendar. So there are people out there, and maybe on this call, that are using a paper schedule or film X-rays. And so maybe getting a CAD scanner today isn't where you are, and that's totally fine. However, many people don't look at technology as something that we should have a timeline for, and put the easier small wins in the beginning and then take the bigger chunks later on after we've developed the skills and the team that is excited about implementing technology. And that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to talk about sort of for the context of this presentation, a little bit about when we implement technology, a concept that I'm excited about called XQ that I heard about from a mentor of mine. And XQ is getting to the types of intelligence. And we all know about IQ, which is the intelligent quotient. It's kind of the horsepower of the engine in your brain. And what's become very popular recently, if you listen to any management or leadership presentations, people talk about emotional quotient, right? When we're all starved for team members, and leading, managing, attracting, retaining the best team members is a core piece of what we need to do in a dental practice today. And having high emotional intelligence so that we can lead a team is crucial today. I also believe that there's another phase that we're going to be talking more and more about, just in general in business, but definitely in dentistry. And that's XQ, the experience quotient. My experience to this point is I have 20 years of adding technology to my practice and other people's practices, which makes it easier for me to implement any technology, any change, frankly, in an organization. However, that might not be yours. And you may be that person with film X-rays or with paper schedule, and that's totally fine. However, it doesn't matter how high your IQ is or your EQ, it's going to be a bigger challenge when it comes to XQ, because you just don't have the experience. And so my advice to anybody here who's thinking this is a challenge for me would be to shortcut by hiring or working with others that have the experience in doing what you're looking to do. This is kind of a who, not how, right? If you haven't worked on, CAD CAM scanning, and that's the next step in your technology windfall in your practice, reach out to NDX, reach out to the people that are the manufacturers, get the help you need, because if you haven't done it before, you either have to get a lot of experience in a short period of time or work with people that have already had lots of experience. And so don't hesitate. I mentioned it yesterday, but your laboratory technician at NDX has had the repetitions with people that have already implemented probably whatever piece of technology you're looking to implement, if it affects the clinical delivery of care. So reach out to them, reach out to your representatives and get the help you need from people that have the experience already. Reach out to those with the XQ. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how high your EQ is. Just having the experience with that piece of technology will shortcut your implementation greatly. So let's move on to the levels of technology. We talked about level 0 yesterday, which was the mindset, getting your mindset in the place of not cutting corners, but being efficient and systematized so that we can get that elusive trifecta of lower costs, higher speed, and higher quality, right? So today we're going to talk about the actual technologies that make that happen, starting off with level 1, meeting patients' expectations. And I have to qualify what I mean by this. I don't mean patients' expectations of a dental practice. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, because our patient is different. It's a different human being than it was when I got out of dental school, largely because of that device in this woman's hands, right? And what has that done to people? It has turned them into squirrels with very short attention spans, right? And ultimately in dentistry, what has happened, not just with their phones, but when they walk around planet Earth outside of dental practices, they have experiences. And those experiences are very different than what happens in a dental practice today. So if, for example, right before this meeting, I went to get a gift for an employee who just totally executed phenomenally well today. So I went and I took my and I don't want to type in an address or look up her address and so I pulled up the Starbucks app and I went click, click, click and sent her a gift, right? I don't know, maybe it took me 30 seconds to send a gift, right? That's the type of experience that our patients have every day in businesses, in interactions with other humans and transactions that they have going. It's Amazon, it's Starbucks, it's Target, it's Walmart, it's the Delta application. I was doing stuff on there earlier today. Even your bank has these applications. Like all these experiences have trained people of what they should have when they interact with a place of business like a dental practice. And so I like to pull away and think, if there was a human that had never been to a dental practice in the year 2023 today, but they were going to one for the first time, what would that patient experience without ever having any knowledge of dentistry? What would they expect of a dental practice today? That is what we're talking about in level 1. Number 1 would be a responsive website. I'm not talking about an application. I'm just talking about a website. When you look at it on your phone, it looks like a website on a phone. It doesn't have the logo here and then all the text off to the side and you have to scroll to the right. And it's shocking how many dental practices don't have a website at all. So if you're one of the people thinking, oh my gosh, this is the first thing he's talking about, and I don't even have a website, don't worry, you are absolutely not alone, right? Again, my perspective here is not what's normal in dentistry. It's what I think patients would expect is normal. And what does that mean? That means if we get to the spot where we meet patients' expectations, that's pretty much the topic of my best-selling book, The Patient First Manifesto, that we will attract many, many patients to us, as we'll talk more about tomorrow. But the cost framework, as we mentioned yesterday, is what I'm going to go through every one of these pieces of technology with, right? What is the clinical quality when it comes to your practice website? Well, it depends on your website is the short answer, because you could, for example, have your paperless forms on your website. You could have 24 hours, 7-day-a-week emergency care with a teledentist through the teledentist. You could have the ability, as shown here, to make a payment, right? Getting paid, people pay what's in front of them. So if you have a button to make a payment or make an appointment, these all elevate the clinical quality of our care, because it's pulling all of this monotonous tasks away from our business team that's overwhelmed and putting it in the hands of the patient so that they actually have an experience where they can interact with us directly from their phone, their mobile device, where more than half the people are looking at your website today. So having a secure, responsive website, I believe, dramatically improves the quality of care we can deliver in our practices. We'll talk about more of the things you can put on your website in a little bit and tomorrow. Also dramatically improves the patient experience. I can't tell you when I last called a restaurant for reservation. And it's not because people just love calling dental practices, right? It's because a lot of practices haven't incorporated the ability to make an appointment on their website, right? It dramatically improves the patient experience. And I get it. There's other factors that you want to take into account. If you have questions about how to do these things for you, certainly put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. Huge ROI. If you have a website, it's like the website has gone from business card for your practice to what I believe to be the digital front door for patients. New patients particularly are looking to interact with you on your website. And again, we're going to talk a lot more about that tomorrow. When it comes to your team health, automating payments, automating appointments, so that you don't have to go back and forth with the team with phone calls or either secure or not secure emails, which is a whole nother talk show. Texting with patients, either secure or not secure, another talk show. Every single one of our cost pillars, the cost of implementation, is in my mind a dramatic positive when we have a responsive website, and it is 100%. I believe the first expectation that a patient would have of a dental practice today. So that's why I started off with this. And also, most dental practices don't have an interactive, responsive website. So again, even though it's my number one, if you don't have it, not a big deal. most dentists don't. It's just what I would put at the very front of technology that has a very low barrier. You can get this done for free, or at least if you have a website, less than you're paying now, and get all the technology on there very easily, very low cost, and has massive upside. So it is the very first technology. If you didn't have any technology in your practice, frankly, I would say start off with a responsive website. Number 2, digital x-rays. I love using this as an example. I would put this right up there with number 1 because we have to take radiographs, and there is so much massive upside to digital x-rays in every single one of the cost of implementation. I would love to have the conversation if anybody disagrees with me that there's higher clinical quality in digital x-rays versus film. I mean, I think I've had that conversation many times for people that are still using film x-rays, but the patient experience, the clinical quality, the ROI, and the team health are all dramatically higher. And I am not shy about saying I believe every dentist should use digital x-rays, period, end of story. This is number 2 on our level 1 of technologies to implement. Which digital x-ray system? There's some phenomenal ones at a higher quality resolution. There's all sorts of things we can do with digital x-rays, but the short version is any of them, in my opinion, are better than film x-rays. If you went to the trade show and bought any system out there, right, I think you're going to be ahead of film x-rays. Now there's ones that for more affordable, I've got some favorites. If you guys are talking about highest quality, I've got some favorites. But in reality, if you just look at it from the perspective of, what's best for your practice and you're using film x-ray, I would shift ASAP to digital x-rays. Next up on our list, and these are in order of what I would believe I would implement if I had no technology in my practice today. When I talk about technology, obviously I'm not talking about high-speed handpieces or traditional analog dentistry. I'm talking about if you're a practice in 1990, right, and you hadn't changed anything, what would I implement? Number 1, responsive website, secure, that has some of these functionalities on it. Number 2, digital x-rays. And number 3, paperless forms. The amount of time wasted in the average dental practice that uses paper forms, clipboard with a piece of paper, is bonkers. And we've done lots of research at this at my prior company that I sold a couple of years ago, Opera DDS, that Jessica mentioned. It absolutely improves the clinical quality. Miscommunications are 1/3 of medical errors, and dentistry is no different. So having accurate information, I believe, is key to providing quality care. It is such a better experience for patients. I don't know about you, but the last time I filled out a form on a clipboard, it was at a medical practice. And I saw the iPad behind the counter. And I said, why am I filling this out, this paper form, when there's an iPad right there? And I know your paperless form's on there. And the response I got was, yeah, our team doesn't like using it, right? Why? Well, that's my point right here. Teams always drift back to whatever they were doing before, even if it's worse in every single way, because we are creatures of habit, right? So if we don't get our team buy-in, and we'll talk about that in a bit, and we don't remind people of what we decided to do, people are always going to drift back. And that's why I don't recommend implementing a bunch of these at once. Pick one to implement, and then make sure that you have it implemented for 90 days so that the habit has stuck before you implement another thing. That's why I don't want you to shift to the level 3 technologies that we're talking about if you haven't got the level 1 technologies first. If you don't have a responsive website, absolutely do that. Make sure it sticks, get it done, then move on to the next thing. Digital x-rays, paperless forms. Paperless forms, again, I believe improve all 3 of these, not just a little bit. All 3, responsive website, digital x-ray, paperless forms, complete no-brainers. However, people will drift back. People need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. So we want to make sure that the habit is there before we implement the next thing. And if you get in the habit of doing this, you might have an employee that comes to you and say, boy, we're always doing something new. And then what I would say is, yes, because what we look to do is to improve our care, improve our clinical quality, improve our ROI, improve our team's health. Would you like to do that? Great. Let's keep it going. Let's keep that party rocking. If not, I don't know what to tell you. If, however, you try to do it too fast before things are implemented, then people can get worn out. So again, I just want to mention, even though we're talking about these technologies very quickly today, implement them mindfully, so that you make sure that you don't drift backwards. Next up are e-referrals. That means using electronic lab scripts, electronic referrals. Again, these can be free, dramatically improve clinical quality, dramatically improve the patient experience. Free, so that a huge ROI, and it's way easier and better for your team. It's way more efficient. One big thing I like to talk about here is I think it's 38% of referrals that are filled out that patient doesn't actually go see the specialist in dentistry. So if somebody comes in with a bombed out tooth and I don't feel comfortable extracting the tooth, that patient hasn't been to the dentist in, let's say, 20 years. And I go, well, I don't feel comfortable extracting this tooth. I'm going to send you down the block to my friendly oral surgeon. And I don't want to pick up the phone and call him because that's a pain in the rear. So I'm going to take out a piece of paper and write this out. And I know, it might take a few days for you to get in. So in addition to that, I'm going to give you antibiotics and some pain meds. Mr. Patient, thanks for coming in. Go see Dr. Jones down the street. Well, that patient hasn't been to the dentist in 20 years, likely because they have anxiety about going to see the dentist. So they're going to go the first thing they're going to do is go to the pharmacy, usually get their pain meds and their antibiotics, start taking them, feel better, and go, guess what? I'm not going to see that oral surgeon because I hate going to the dentist. And that happens a shockingly large amount of time today. And what that does is it chokes our production. It chokes our specialist production. It dramatically reduces our quality of care, right? And it just is, it's an open back door in many practices. By doing electronic referrals, you can close the loop. And using the right platform, you can have everybody communicating in real time on a case. So you can have your NDX lab technician, you can have your orthodontist, you can have your oral surgeon, and you, if you're the general dentist, being the quarterback of all of that, and track that case from treatment plan to execution with everybody involved, right? And so that's a whole nother coordination of care that just skyrockets skyrockets the clinical quality. However, with less effort, frankly, there's no phone calls, there's no non-secure communication, all done securely. Just again, but the biggest factor here, in my opinion, is closing the loop on the massive amount of referrals that don't actually go see the specialist in the first place. Digital case tracking, we talked about that a little bit, but basically knowing when your lab cases are coming back, knowing when you referred somebody out, being able to see that in a consolidated format. Again, what this is kind of bringing all your calendars in one actionable spot that makes it so that you don't have to go to Google Calendar for your personal information, EagleSoft for your practice, your practice calendar, your HIPAA training to another spot, and your lab case tracking, having it all consolidated into a mobile-friendly format. Again, increases clinical quality, makes your patient's experiences more seamless, massive ROI, and makes your team's health and your team's anxiety and headaches dramatically reduce. So a fully integrated calendar that brings all of your calendars together in a single spot is next on my level 1 list. This is secure communication with all of the people that you work with. So whether you're talking about your team in your office, whether you're talking about your laboratory at NDX, whether you're talking about the specialist, having secure messaging that's instantaneous, right? Dramatically, again, in level 1, pretty much all the costs are going to be no-brainers. Implementing every single one of these, I think, will dramatically increase your clinical quality, your patient's experiences, your ROI, and your team health. So that's level 1. Again, I believe in level 1, all complete no-brainers, from first off with a responsive website, ending up with secure messaging meaning HIPAA compliant. So I would say that if you don't do all of level 1, I would set a plan, frankly, myself, to get them all implemented over time, mindfully, so that you're not overwhelming people one at a time, starting off with a responsive website and digital x-rays and ending up with like a secure version of Slack where you can communicate with everybody that you communicate with on patient care instantly and securely. We're going to move on to level 2, which is the top percentage of dentists for now. So this is not, again, you might, and lots more dentists may be using some of these technologies than what I mentioned in level 1, because we're talking about it from the patient's perspective. Number 1 is teledentistry. I think that being able to send images, video to dentists, from team members, is under leveraged in our industry. It was the hottest topic for 2 weeks during COVID. And then everybody was like, I don't get it. I think the reason why people don't get it is it hasn't been implemented, hasn't been educated. People haven't been educated on when to use teledentistry. The places that I see it used best are consults, cosmetics, implants, TMD, and emergencies. What do I mean by that? Well, like you see here, if somebody hasn't been to the dentist in 20 years, they probably have anxiety. So having them take photos of their teeth before they even contact your office many times and send them to you, you can have a team member reach out and say, oh, Mr. Jones, I see that you have some dental issues here. You don't need to be a dentist to see that. You can just look in the mirror. But we see people like you all the time. Don't worry, come on in. We'll take a couple images. We'll tell you your options and you determine what, if anything, you want to do. People have anxiety about coming to the dentist, which is oftentimes why their teeth, it's one of the major reasons why their teeth are in a state of disarray. And oftentimes it's a life event, the marriage, divorce, inheritance, whatever it is, that now they're going, well, now's the time to get my teeth fixed. And giving them a safe, easy step digitally to virtually enter your practice is, in my opinion, the way to have high dollar value cases come into your practice. Second to that is emergencies. We started doing emergency teledentistry in our application when I was at my son's baseball game and he was up to bat and I got a call and I knew the phone number and I knew the conversation I was going to have with the patient that I just did a crown on. Because every year when we did a crown, we had the exact same conversation, right? So I took the phone call because I didn't want to have to call her back, and I missed my son's double. And I went, I'm never doing this again. From now on, I'm going to have a picture of the tooth or be able to securely message with my patients so that I don't have to have these conversations, or if I'm in a movie, I have to step out or wait till 2 hours later when they've probably Googled dentist near me and gone to somebody else, right? So emergencies are a huge area in dentistry to leverage teledentistry to keep people in your practice. And like I mentioned before, there's a great organization, the Teledentist, that you can actually have a dentist that's licensed in your state handle these calls and get them scheduled 24/7. So you don't even need to have a team member. You can outsource that to the teledentist to do it for you, or you can have it done with many, many different systems in your practice. So again, from the patient's perspective, not an expectation today, but it's going to thrill people. And there's different types of teledentistry. There's asynchronous, like secure texting, and synchronous, like a secure version of Zoom, what we're doing tonight. I like platforms that do both because I think both have a lot of uses. You might be talking to a patient, say, could you send me a picture of your tooth? Right there, you're using both platforms, right? And you can leverage these platforms not just for communication with your patients. You can leverage them with your laboratory, with NDX, with team members, whenever you need to communicate securely. If you're talking or passing information about patients, that includes any PHI, which is pretty much everything we do in dentistry. So teledentistry is a broad sort of marketing term. Just realize what I think the use cases that are useful today, and there's more, but for the average practice, if you're going to get going with it, consults to bring in new patients, particularly for higher dollar cases like implants, ortho, TMD. TMD, you can actually do the follow-ups through a teledentistry consult, and emergencies. Let's talk a little bit about cone beam. I was one of the first cone beams in the state of Minnesota, the first one that was both 2D and 3D, and I believe strongly in this technology. But here it is at level 2 behind teledentistry. And why? It's because I believe that cone beam, when most people think about cone beam, or maybe if you're talking to a salesperson, they talk about the value of cone beam being observations by patients. Patients can see their mouth in 3D. Great. That's nice. It's nice. But I don't think that's the number one reason to have a cone beam. The number one reason I believe for cone beam is the C. The quality of care that we provide is exponentially higher if you're using a cone beam versus not. Full stop. I don't think you can argue that any other way. Your quality of care is higher when you have a cone beam when you're treatment planning. We could talk use cases, and I'm happy to, but it is dramatically higher. So why is it sort of here in the middle of our list? It's because of the ROI. Team health is easy. I think it's relatively easy to get trained on the CBCT scans. Anybody that sells you one will train you and your team on it. But the ROI, you have to be doing specific use cases like implants or endo to really get the value out, the ROI. But I still believe it has a place right here in level 2 because the quality of care that we can provide through cone beam is so much higher. And it's a great technology to talk about complementary technologies, CAD/CAM and CBCT. AI and CBCT is just getting going. And having CAD/CAM, CBCT, and AI together, we're going to be doing some really phenomenal things in the near future. And so as we build these technologies, realize, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, some of these technologies are additive. This technology makes that technology better. A responsive website with paperless forms or teledentistry on that website makes everything better. Cone beam is one of those technologies that clinically is additive to other clinical procedures. Moving on to CAD/CAM, which is one of my favorite technologies from what I practice, behind cone beam, because I think that cone beam is such a huge game changer with clinical quality. However, scanning scanning teeth versus taking a physical impression. It's better in every way. So I feel like today, if you don't have a digital scanner, contact NDX, get recommendations. If you have all the technologies up to this point, which I would most probably don't, so don't feel bad if you don't. But if you do, but you don't have a scanner, I would recommend reaching out and getting recommendations on which scanners to use. One of the nice things about CAD/CAM is that there's a lot of different options. And so what I want to mention here is that each one of these technologies has sub-technologies, has sub-options. Do you want to scan? Do you want to scan certain things? Do you want to mill? Do you want to have a porcelain oven? Do you want to get a 3D printer that's hooked up to your CAD/CAM system and your CBCT? There's so many options here. But again, just lean onto the cost of implementation and ask yourself, is my practice right for it at this point in time? If you don't have a cone beam and you don't have a responsive website, now is not the time to start doing milling. I would do the other things first, personally. And again, these are my recommendations, obviously, from my perspective. Your practice may be different. You might want to switch around and put a scanner ahead of cone beam. I totally get it. I totally get it. That's not the purpose of this course. The purpose of this course is to talk about the technologies and to think about the timing of them when they're right for you. I would believe, looking at it from the perspective of not just your perspective, but your patients first. Moving on to our last stage, emerging technologies. This is level 3. There's a little video here that I think I can play. Yeah, that shows what I believe this technology to be. So you see this guy biking, right? And he's thinking that he wants to do something innovative, right? And so in this bike race, this guy decided to be more streamlined. This is a little bit wacky, right? But what it ends up doing is bringing him to the front of the pack from the back, right? This was an innovation that I don't think I would recommend anybody doing, because there's another version of this video that could end with him smashing his face on the pavement and requiring teledentistry to get his teeth fixed, right? But it worked out for this guy in this case. And that's what these technologies, in my opinion, are for the average dental practice. So level 1 through level 2, I think if you go through all the way through level 1 and then all the way through level 2, I think you're going to be kind of way ahead of the pack. These ones, I think you want to make sure, double, triple, quadruple check. They're usually for the people who want to be way on the tip of the spear, like myself, to implement, because they require a lot more effort for less positive results. My first technology in this category is 3D printing. Not for NDX. NDX does tons of 3D printing and they're masters of it. But bringing this into your office today, I think you have to really have a use case for it. And I have a 3D printer in my practice. I do think you can do some high quality results. I'm not so sure about the patient experience, whether patients care or not. Frankly, I'll show you the one case that we've tried to implement a positive experience for patients. The ROI there is it's a questionable in my mind. And the team health 3D printing is an art form right now, and it requires a lot of effort and training and attention. So I would not recommend the average dental practice to get into a 3D printer in their practice at this moment in time. However, when asked at the end of 2022, going into 2023, what was the one technology that dentists were thinking of implementing in the year 2023? Number 1 at the top of the list was 3D printing. We've gone through a lot of technologies today, and a lot of dentists who said that they wanted to have a 3D printer implemented in their practice did not have. So that's my whole point today, is if you're thinking, well, boy, I'm really excited about 3D printing, carefully think through the rest of the list and see if it really, really makes the cut. It's expanded actually this year. There's a lot of innovation in this space. And so very likely tomorrow, next year, next month, 3D printing might be in a level 2 technology, because there's lots of movement. As we go down the list, these technologies are improving rapidly. The one piece that we use in my practice to enhance the patient experience is occlusal splints, right? We do what we call mouth guard for life, where if you come in and get a mouth guard, you pay $700 for it, every year we'll make you a new mouth guard for free as long as you maintain your recall and you pay your bill and you don't have any unopened treatment plans. So we use it as a way to thrill patients, to make sure that they have a splint when they need it. If their dog ate a splint, we say no worries. If they're a good patient of record, we just print them a new one. That's been the best use case that I've found in our practice for a 3D printer that helps check the boxes. AI, it's getting pushed a lot in the world right now. I would put this at a level 3. There are use cases for it. However, I think if the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak, there's other technologies I would implement first. And when we talk about AI, that's a marketing term, kind of like teledentistry. Just if you're talking to someone that says we leverage AI, because right now a lot of technology companies, basically every technology says they have an AI component. We at Tooth Apps just launched our AI product last week, or our first AI product. Are they talking about an algorithm? Are they talking about, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks? These are all different aspects of what people say when they mean AI. But because it's such a marketing term, we have to know, what are we using it for? And in my opinion, the use case that we have now, which is reading a radiograph primarily, I don't think is the best use case. Why? Because we all can read x-rays, right? I think having a red box around caries might help patients see, that yes, there's a third-party person or third-party software that has it validated that there's an x-ray there. But we can also talk to the other talented people in our practice to do that too. And I'm not saying that they don't have value. I'm just saying that I would look at AI, the way it's being leveraged in dentistry today, in the context of the value it has against our ROI and our training for our team compared to the other items on the list. If you've gone through everything else and you have a 3D printer and you want to talk about AI, absolutely. There's also AI like this, ChatGPT. ChatGPT and other AIs, this is more along the lines of what we're doing, is I can teach a human to read an x-ray in probably a couple of days, right? However, what a human doesn't want to do is research every single dental study that's ever been written and published on the internet and every single study in medicine and cross-reference them, right? A human can't do that, but AI can. And that's where I think we should be leveraging AI, and we will be leveraging AI in the future, doing things that humans cannot possibly do. That's what a large learning model is. And we're going to be incorporating more and more of that. And it's going to be seamless in a lot of cases behind the scenes. You don't even know what's going on. However, so I just want to educate a little bit of AI so that when you are talking to a company and they say that they're using AI, ask them what they mean by that. And if it's something a human can do, frankly, personally, I'm not impressed. If it's something that is transformative because a human doesn't even know how they would start doing it, that's where AI right now, today, at this moment in time, has its highest uses, in my opinion. Now that's going to change because there's billions of dollars being invested. There's much more going on behind the scenes all the time in this. So this AI is going to change, month to month. Automation, huge in my book. However, it hasn't been incorporated that much in dentistry, but it will more and more over time. It's an emerging technology, robotics and other things that we're doing, because right now 50% of our costs are our team, and that's going up all the time. Right now, there's been wage explosion. So look for processes that can improve things that humans do so that humans don't have to do it. The boring, laborious, mundane tasks like paperless forms, but automations that are emerging that are going to be replacing people in a positive way. Not replacing people because people are good at doing something, but replacing the tasks that people don't like doing in the first place. So we can free up our talented team to do what they do best, which is take care of people. So we only have a couple minutes left, but it's not going to take long. That I want to mention, how do we talk about these technologies, like I mentioned in the beginning, so that our team is happy about it and our patients are excited about it? It's very simple, in my opinion. Before you get excited about technology, you said, boy, that Alaskan guy talked about teledentistry, and I want to incorporate that in my practice. Ask yourself one question before you talk to a team member or to your patients. Why should I, meaning them, care? If you're talking to your assistant about teledentistry, why should they care? Maybe he or she doesn't need to take call on the weekends anymore, or have that phone call when they're at the movie theater, right? Why should the patient care? We're available to you 24/7, 365, right? When communicating to the team member or when communicating to the patient, don't talk about what you like about the technology, which sometimes for myself is very difficult to do because I'm so jazzed about how we can place implants virtually in 3 dimensions and automate our restorations and all sorts of great things. But patients don't care. Even if they're having an implant, they're thinking about the workflow and clinical flow of dentistry is your job. What's their job? What's in it for them? Well, less time, less pain, less anxiety, higher predictability. It's just better all the way around. If you're going to have your tooth replaced, this makes it seamless. Something to those effects. Ask yourself whenever you're communicating with somebody else in your practice about technology, completely forget about what you care about, and talk to them about why they actually care about it. It's simple, but not easy to do. So I, if you have any, write this one down. And then what you'll find is that as you implement technology, you're going to get maximum engagement by your team because people love working in a practice where they're striving to do better every day, right? And that is there's nothing more motivating to a player team members than having a practice that's incrementally improving, that's mindfully implementing technology in a way that we're getting wins all the time. It's great for patient engagement, which right now is a key thing for retaining the high quality team members that are looking to retain. But it all starts with you, right? Everybody, this kind of goes back to yesterday, but everybody in the practice is going to follow the lead dog. So if you're a dentist, if you're a practice manager and you're on this call, you have to set the pace for everybody else. And realize again that these are building blocks. Don't jump in and do 12 things at once. Mindfully implement things one at a time when it is right for you. Knowing that as you add technologies, these do have an additive effect. So when you add a responsive website, teledentistry, online payments, paperless forms, these are going to work together to get disproportionately better results. And every single technology is going to have some type of implementation. So if you do it right, when you bring in that scanner, the first scan you do is not going to be as great as the 50th scan you do. So you'll get exponential growth with the technology. So the best time to start is now. To recap, start by mastering your personal and collaborative productivities. The question isn't what to implement, but when we should implement things in our practices. Take the crawl, walk, run approach, add the fundamental technologies, and then supportive, and then sort of if you have the guts for it, the more exponential, experiential emerging technologies, and evaluate the technology using the cost framework, like we talked about yesterday and throughout this presentation. And then, very importantly, when talking to your team, when talking to patients, ask what's in it for them. Thank you very much. Thanks for staying with me, and I look forward to talking about how to drive new patients to your practice leveraging technology.